pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we started, it might have been customary to announce that one of the commissioners' relatives passes away, and it got a little mixed up in the paper, but my niece died. Her funeral was Saturday. Autumn Erickson, her dad was a circuit court judge here in Don Erickson. My sister is Marilyn.
Okay.
So just wanted to tell you that because it got mixed up in the paper, got in two different sections. So
Our sympathies to you.
it's up there at Shank or Wentz, right?
Okay,
Thank
if
you.
everybody would shut their cell phones either off or vibrate for the meeting, I appreciate it. Welcome to the media and visitors that we have today. I'd also like to mention today in history, August 6, 1945, we dropped the first nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. So that's just a note in history.
I got another note,
there's a-
excuse me, in 1782,
Gary.
the Purple Heart was also, so today is August 7th, is another day to remember. Thank you.
Sign up in the back of the room for discussion at the end of the meeting. We'll be picking up that sheet as we go into executive session day, so if you'd like to speak at the end of the meeting in the public comment period, please sign up on the sheet in the back of the room. So, are there any financial conflicts of interest?
I have none.
No? On the agenda, we're going to remove the item on the resolution. Oh, excuse me, non-financial interest. Do you have a reason for abstaining on a
I have
non-financial?
none.
None noted for all of us. And on the additions and changes to the agenda, we're going to remove the resolution item number 5 on wheel tax. And I'm going to add at the end of the meeting just a building maintenance update. Are there any other additions or corrections to the minute, excuse me, the agenda? Now I entertain a motion.
Move it. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, on to the minutes. Everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, are there any additions or corrections?
Yes or no? Move approval of the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are passed. Next item on the agenda is the claims. Has everyone had a chance to review the claims? Are there any questions on the claims? Any comments on the claims? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve claims.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Next item is the July payroll. Is there,
Move approval of the July payroll.
thank you,
Second that.
motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Claims or payroll passes. Next item is the transfer of ambulance accumulated dollars.
That's just the budgeted,
Budget.
accumulated dollars over several months of years. And we're to keep out his new ambulance this year, which is just,
This is just cleaning up the books after that.
Well, he still has a balance, I think, in the account.
no,
No, there's-
because he got a pickup too.
Yeah.
So, no, he's using it.
If the balance is zero. Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion for
Is
the,
that the 125,000? That is,
it was,
It's 168.
I move to approve the ambulance transfer, $200 down the side, ambulance budget.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Here, we're gonna, have to call Paul. shouldn't we? Have to call Paul, shouldn't we? No, I'm in the meeting. Yeah.
Okay, the next one we have is budget cash transfer to emergency management, and that's also a budgeted item, correct, Dan?
Correct, that's the 125.
Need a motion to,
Move approval of the transfer, cash transfer to emergency management of $125,000.
second,
I'll second
discussion?
that. What was that in regards to?
That's just a budgeted, when we do budget every year, it's in the budget, because he doesn't generate enough cash.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next one is the River Aspen East Road District.
The election, and it passed 11-0.
So what we have here is,
I'm not sure I understand.
I don't think I do either.
You don't seem to be clear.
Turn it off. Here. This way.
I'm not sure I understand.
as I was saying, this is an establishment of a new road district, River Aspen Road, East Road District. And they have held elections, and,
On July 20th, and 11-0.
okay? So they are therefore certified as a road district.
Yes.
I move to approve the River Aspen East Road District.
Second? Is there a second? Need a second?
I guess I'm a second.
Discussion. Any question?
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Who seconded?
All right, the next thing is the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the consent agenda, and is there anything that we need to pull out of the consent agenda to discuss? Included in that, we have a David Klein plat, Rick Doherty plat, Ralph Norford plat, Dennis Brick plat, Robert Law plat, right of ways by BY Electric. Is there anything that we need to pull out there and discuss?
Move to approve consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
some
We're
trouble
having
with that,
their
with,
mics back. You do anything about it?
Excuse me?
We're having problems with the microphones. She's not being able to hear us.
It's a fun hat. Imagine.
Anyway, we got a couple minutes before our next item.
We need a vote on
We have a motion and a second
Any
on
better?
the consent agenda. Say something. Have you heard anything yet?
Let me check.
Okay, so we have, Brian, got some information for us on the change order.
Yeah, we have a change order we're gonna bring before you as the board, and I'm gonna have Kevin with Clark Engineering, Kevin Goff, and we also have Colin Kelly's on the inspection type of items and on site, so I'll just have Kevin take it over from here.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Goff, as Brian said. I'm here to talk to you about your, let's see, you guys are calling it the 2018 Yankton County Bridge Rehabilitation. This is those 3 gym bridges kind of northwest of here that have been under construction. You guys had a grant to do this project from the DOT. It was
Yeah, the
80%.
BIGs, it was part of our,
Big grant,
The big
exactly.
grants.
Yeah, this is the one with the big grant signs out
Yes.
there. We signed a contract, or you guys executed a contract with the Journey Group. Sometimes people call them Sioux Falls Construction, but I guess on here it's the Journey Group. And that work has been going on. They've worked on all of the bridges and proceeding. There was one element of the work that was a little difficult for us to predict the quantity that we would do. Those bridges had kind of a rubberized wearing surface put on them. One of the things we're doing is we're doing concrete repair on the deck. And the way we determine what areas need to be chipped out and repaired is to drag chains on them, and that rubberized coating made that real difficult. So it's part of the first process, it's part of the trials and tribulations of rehabilitation. You never really know what you're gonna get until you dig into it. They scraped that off, and we've done some chaining is what we do, drag metal objects, use a little hammer to determine the areas that need to be repaired. And I guess the bad news is we have underestimated that quantity. So we have started to, we know we're going to overrun those quantities, so we're bringing that information to you now and a change order. Again, this is a grant, it's 80/20. The changes that we're adding, this change order that I'll be asking you to approve here in a second is for an additional $32,000. There will be some additional amounts, maybe something in that same ballpark that we'll be back to with you later once we get the rest of it done. But all of this amount is under the grant amount, so it's all still covered, 80% state, 20% local. And as Brian explained to me, you guys have the 20% in your budget, so it doesn't, there's no budget request associated with this.
So is this 32,000 just the total?
This is the increase that we are
Increase in
asking
the
for at this
total.
time. I think
Okay.
we will likely be back with an additional $32,000 plus or minus, whatever that turns out to be. We don't know what they're gonna do until they start chipping at it and actually know what needs to be replaced.
This is on decking itself? you're
Yeah, it's on the
talking?
surface of the deck.
When you say you drug the chain across, were you dragging it and breaking up the rubber coating?
The rubber coating was removed with a machine that
So then
ground it
this was
off.
the
We ground it off down, so we're down to the concrete
Okay.
surface, and then we can make those determinations about where the concrete needs to be replaced.
Is this more than one bridge?
It's 3 bridges.
But the change removal today is on all 3 of them, or just on,
It's on all 3. It's one contract for all 3 projects, all 3 bridges, one project.
okay? Has there been anything else that you found that was a surprise?
There is one additional element that it doesn't have to be included in the project. It is the same type of work. And we're going to work with the contractors and bring a price back to talk with you about that. It's to do a little additional abutment repair on one of the substructure units. It'd be the same exact type of repair with concrete, chipping out some old concrete and replacing it with some new. We're going to get a price to do that, and obviously we want to make sure it's within the funding, the grant funding, and what you guys have budgeted for. And if we can do that, we'll probably try to leverage that. Just because you've got a grant, you can get 80% of it paid for now. If Brian has to come back and do that in a few years, that would be 100% out of his budget. So we're going to try to leverage that to the extent we can.
The repairs that you are making, or the rehabilitation, I guess you're calling this, to these bridges, do you have an estimate on how that's going to extend the lives of these bridges?
Yeah, that's a good question. Brian had asked me to kind of address that. Really, the repairs we're doing are to extend the life of the bridge. So we're taking elements that are deteriorating, like the deck. This doesn't, so we're extending the life, and I guess we always say if we can't do an improvement that's gonna make it last for 20 more years, then we shouldn't. So our life expectancy would be you won't have to do anything with this bridge for 20 years. These are 1957 era bridges. So they're getting up there in age. You're getting your money's worth out of them. This is a good time to be spending a little money and maybe buying another 20 years versus waiting 10 and having to replace it. But this does not affect the strength of the bridge. The girders, we're not doing anything that has steel girders underneath the deck. We're just rehabilitating the girders and maybe a little bit of substructure in the concrete. So this won't necessarily increase the strength. I know there's been some concern about the posting on those bridges. We have never load rated those bridges before. We'll be load rating them before summer's over. The guys we're doing your bridge inspections this summer as well. So we'll take a hard look at that. I know Brian has stressed to us that those are important bridges. You don't have that many Jim River bridges. So we're gonna take a hard look at it
Thank
as
you.
well.
Now, will you be removing concrete, cutting out metal, into any new metal?
There is a little bit of rebar work that's being done. That's not part of this change order, but we're doing some joint replacement. There were some joints that were done in 1957 that we wouldn't consider that to be a good design now, and it allowed water to get through, so there's some joints that we're rebuilding. In those areas, we're getting into the reinforcing steel, and some of that's just we're chipping around it. They don't use big equipment. This is little 5-pound jackhammers, little handheld jackhammers that they do, so it's kind of delicate work. But we are exposing some steel and removing some steel that was associated with the old joints, and replacing those with something that's a little better serviceable. And if Brian needs to fix it, it's something he can fix readily.
And then when you weld, you're gonna weld some plates in there or something, maybe?
I don't think there's no welding going on. Everything will be cast in place and encased in concrete or have some anchors that tie back into the concrete, so there won't be any. There might be some incidental welding, but there's no structural welding or anything like that going on. Does that answer your question?
Will that welding be x-rayed then?
No, the welding, what we're doing, if we were doing welding, it's very typical that you would. That's a good question. But where we would do that is if we were doing welding, if we were welding some flange plates on the girders or something, or a structural steel element, you would x-ray those welds for sure. But that's not the type of work we're doing here. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Do we need a motion on this? Any other questions by the commission?
Do you mind if we talk a little bit about the sign project?
We can. Colin's actually working on that project too, under contract with the DOT. You want to take care of this matter first?
We need to
We'll take
we need to have a motion on this.
Okay. I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, go ahead, Ray.
You're with the signs?
Yeah. Yeah. Colin Kelly is an engineer with Clark Engineering who's been overseeing the signs. I don't think you actually did the sign inventories and the plans on this one, but he's done all that type of work before, so go ahead.
So I'd like to just have a little conversation here because I've been getting some phone calls. Help me out here, this is federal.
Yes, sir.
This came out like 5 years ago, this whole project started in the surrounding counties around us, correct?
Yep.
The nuts and bolts of it, since this is federal, what you're doing has to be adhered to, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So what happens, explain the purpose of this, that it has to be adhered. Who's at fault if signs get trashed? How does this work?
So when we go through initially, we follow those federal regulations by the Federal Highway Administration. We follow the MUTCD standards, that Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So we install the signs per that, and we have an engineer, professional engineer, stamp those plans, and all those signs will be put in under our inspection. They'll be put in. And so we're responsible when we initially place the signs. Once all the signs are in and the project is over, whoever's in control of those roads, they're the ones who are responsible for the signs then.
Okay. So are these gonna be monitored then?
They will be monitored by whoever's in charge of that road area. So if it's a township road, the township will monitor the signs to make sure they're in place. County roads, county will monitor the signs.
So what happens if they don't get replaced?
Well, the township say would be responsible for anything, if anything were to happen because a sign was missing and it wasn't up to the federal standards, then the township would be responsible.
Ray, are you talking about signs that didn't get installed in the first place?
No,
or are
we're
you
talking about the new project going on
the
here.
new signs that turned out
Yes.
missing?
So, I drove through Mission Hill, and the signs are literally right on the edge of the road. We experienced about 5 months of winter. How is this gonna work out for winter?
With plowing around them?
You know?
Well, this should be, the minimum a sign can be from the edge of the road is 2 feet. So you have a bit of play there to get the wing out 2 feet off the edge of the road. And a lot of those township ditches aren't deep anyways to wing it out further. So are you concerned with them being closer than 2 feet?
I know there's gonna be a lot of signs out in the field. I can understand you putting your signs on federal highways and stuff like that the way you do, but out in the townships, 95% of the traffic on township roads are about township residents. And these are gonna create interesting occasions, because I understand, like you say, that it is the township's responsibility to replace after that, but there's some cockamamie signs being put up out there, and I understand it's all federal, but, and I want that understood, is that it wasn't the county and it wasn't the township who had this dad blasted idea.
Well,
But
I
we
mean,
gotta maintain it
yeah,
after you do it.
correct. But the signs are free to the township.
The
I mean, you're getting
replacements?
all brand new signs. The replacements are not, no.
Okay.
But initially, the signs are free.
I don't know.
For a comment.
The 4x4 wood posts that are being replaced by the, what are they, 1x1 channel?
Yep, about 2-inch telespar post, yep.
2-inch. They have equal strength,
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
really.
Yep.
Yeah, the
There's
benefit of the
steel posts, so.
Yeah. The benefit of the Telspar is if one gets knocked over, is you can literally take a couple bolts out. There's actually a piece in the ground and another piece, you can take a bolt out, cut it off, put the sign right back up. If a wood post breaks, somebody's gotta go back to the shop and get a wood post, so the benefits, that's basically industry standard. We haven't, in fact, we haven't done a signing project in 10 years that, whether it's a road project or anything, where wood posts were used. So it is pretty much the industry standard now. And frankly, they're cheaper than the wood posts.
I have a question.
Louis, you're here.
You missed the announcement about putting the phone in quiet mode. I've had some questions about why the, signs at an intersection, like perhaps it's a T intersection, so it's not going both ways, but instead of the sign being on the side where the road is, it's across the road in the other ditch. Is there reasoning behind that?
Do you know what sort of sign?
We're talking about the road signs,
Oh, the street name signs?
Street name signs. Why
Yeah.
are they in the,
The federal highway standard has them placing all of them in the northeast corner where applicable. If there's a tree or something in a way and there's a visibility issue, then they'll move it. But they want as many of them as they can in that corner just for uniformity.
so
throughout
even
the
if there
county.
isn't a road on the, let's say the road is going north and there's nothing going east, but there's a westbound road, the intersection signs are now in the east ditch when the road is on the west.
If I'm understanding you correctly, yes, I believe so.
It even looks odd.
Yeah, well,
What you're telling us is you're doing it all the federal standards.
yeah, that's correct,
Okay.
yeah.
That would be a state standard, but it's for uniformity, and sometimes it's hard for people in one county to understand. We're trying to get this uniform in all counties.
That's a good answer. I feel comfortable sharing that.
I
Any
want
other
to
questions?
just circle back one time to your liability thing. This comes up a lot of times, just so everybody knows, I know you're probably aware of this. The townships were involved. There were multiple meetings with all of the townships. They knew what signs they were going to get. It's pretty typical that when they start appearing that there is some frustration. But theirs has been, in the last 5 years, a significant reduction in delineators and some signs that were caused a lot of aggravation in the township. So that's really been trimmed back. So for the most part, those signs that a township might choose not to put back up or to take down, I mean, they certainly can do that. It is their authority, but those are safety signs, and I would sure not recommend that people take a safety sign down. You said it, 95% of the people who drive on those are locals, but 5% of them aren't, and you'd hate to see somebody get hurt, and I'd hate to see a township board try to stand up in court and explain why they took a safety sign down because it was a nuisance to somebody. So I understand that it's hard, but a lot of thought goes into that. We have lots and lots of meetings about those things, so I would really encourage you to think long and hard before you start taking a bunch of signs down.
Well, and that's what I've been trying to push on to township people who have called me, you get a hopped up meth head out there. I've pulled several of them out of fields and stuff, and if you remove that signage, you just removed your aspect of walking away from there, so.
Thank you.
You bet.
Brian, is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about either the bridge contracting or bridge structure updates or anything more on the signage?
I don't have anything to add unless you guys have any questions.
I have a question. You sent out an email earlier this morning about the road closure on Northwest Jim River Road. Is it open again?
We were up there working on it today. What happened is I had a crew out actually working on some bridges. We're spraying around the guardrails and stuff. And they drove the pickup across and their front end dropped in, which they thought was a badger hole, and they continued to drive, and then their rear end dropped in, and we were lucky we caught it. What had happened is with these major rains we have gotten, it has washed some of the riprap away from the bridge, and it undermined to the back of the head wall. Or basically what that means is that there was no dirt on the other side of the bridge. All you could see was a hole, but if you look down in there, it was approximately about 16 to 17 feet deep.
Wow.
And we closed it right away, took the backhoe up there and dug it out. And for the time being, since the stream is flowing fairly heavy now, we put some concrete in there because the concrete will not erode compared to dirt. And it'll be open tomorrow. And then if it dries up, or when it dries up, we can get down there to place some more riprap so we won't have these issues again.
Wow.
Any of your people get hurt when the truck fell in, or?
No, they're doing maintenance to the bridge. They weren't driving that fast, so.
Just, it's gonna give them a scare.
Yeah, it just, more and more stuff is starting to show up with the recent flooding. And that's something, you know, without being up there and seeing the hole in the road, it's hard to determine all that. And it just continually keeps showing up. And that's my worry.
Well, thank you for the update on that.
Yep.
Anything else?
We finished up chip sealing last week. I'm sure we all heard about that. I know the lake area is a tough area to deal with. We try to work with them people the best we can down there.
I have a question on that. Last week you were working, you did Timberland, then Deer Boulevard, and then further west.
Yep.
They came back yesterday and put fresh oil,
That's the fog seal.
fog seal. Now, is
Yep.
that gonna happen on all the roads or just those two?
All the roads that were chip sealed will be fog sealed this
Okay.
year.
Because that sure is a sticky mess.
Well, temporarily. I mean, if you were to drive on it today, it's nice and solid. But yes, all the roads that were chip sealed will be fog sealed.
Okay.
And the fog seal basically gives you the adherence of rock, so you don't get the rock chips that you would typically see if you wouldn't do that.
Well, it looks like a nice job on all
I
that.
appreciate that. I know that it was nice to have the contractor here in town, so when he could get to it, I no more than had to make a phone call, and we were getting after 301 and all the other roads too, so.
What is the status of 301?
We got to get the permanent striping on everything that we chip sealed yet, and I'm working with the contractor on that. He's up north currently, and he'll work his way back down here because of the weather cycles.
But it's all done as far as
Correct. The chip sealing.
chip sealed.
Yep.
I've heard good comments on that.
What's that?
What do you think?
I'm happy with the way things have turned out, especially 301. I know I've seen a lot of heavy truck traffic on that already, and it doesn't seem like it's deflecting much, and that was my concern this year with all the moisture we've had. I'm happy with it. I guess I heard positive comments about it. I know it's not the perfect situation. It's not 4 inches of asphalt, but it's what we can afford.
I've heard nothing but good comments from the people that live on it.
So it's a compromise, and I guess that's what we needed to go back to. And when we initially looked at it, I know that it wasn't very desirable to grind these roads up to go back to gravel for a year, but after looking at how 301 turned out, I don't know how somebody could complain.
Well, I appreciate your, the word that comes to mind is stubbornness, but that isn't the proper word.
Well,
You're.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Stick-to-itiveness for us to stay the course on a different cycle, because it's turning out to be a good cycle.
well, I appreciate that. Stubbornness is a word I maybe have heard before, so I don't take offense to it.
All right, anything else, Brian?
Aside from that, I know that it wasn't in the 5-year plan, but it was a planned project. We just started work today down on Rolling Hills Drive. We're actually putting in 2 larger culverts, taking out technically it's a culvert, but it's a smaller bridge, and we're replacing it with 2 culverts. We don't expect any traffic delays down there. Because we are going to keep that road open. That is the only way in, the only way out for those residents. So the road will be open at all the times, and I've already talked with Paul Schurslick. If we are doing some work down there and we would have a minor delay, they will have access in and out of there as far as that goes. When we do get that road tuned or regraded and the bridge tore out, and they'll make sure those residents have access. There may be minor delays, but it's going to be very minor. But there again, I've been working with Paul on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's brought to my attention we didn't do a roll call. So Patty, would you do a roll call?
Here.
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 Here. Okay. We have a motion to go into the Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're in the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Garrity.
Thanks for getting the system on.
Yes, yes, I'm proud of myself. I don't know how I did it, but that's all right. We'll just dingle it, yep, yep.
Give you
It's
credit.
the way that seems to work, but it worked. I pushed the buttons till it made it happen. Okay. First one on the agenda is James Larson, who is asking for a variance of minimum yard requirement, and it was recommended for approval based on findings of fact from the Planning Commission of July 10th for a minimum yard requirement variance on a side yard from 75 feet to 25 to build an accessory structure in the agriculture district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as Tract 3, West Jim River Division, northwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 33, Township 94, Range 55. Hereinafter referred to as Mission Hill North Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is 3616 Southwest Jim River Road, Yankton, South Dakota. So Mr. Larson it's got a rural lot out there. It would be on the east side of town, Southwest Jim River Road. It's off like north of the substation, Northwest Substation. Okay, it's on that road there. Several different residents live along that road. I had no comments, positive or negative, towards it. His structure, let's see, looking at building an accessory structure that meets the requirements otherwise, but he has utilities that are his hardship, and also he wanted to line it up in the existing driveway. And he wants to do a 40 by 60 accessory structure with 16-foot sidewalls. It would be along the north property line. He also wanted to do bathroom facilities, which will require a septic system, which again takes up some of the building space, that the septic field will be out in their interior part of the lot there. So the Planning Commission recommended approval based on those hardships.
That was the Planning Commission.
The planning.
Yes.
Yep. And so they're looking for a variance of 50 feet. Any questions?
Okay, Pat, the field to the north, is that his?
No.
Okay. The field to the east, is that his?
The field to the east would be, yes, it is.
The one to the east is, but the one that you're crowding in from the 75 down to 25 is not his. He's had approval by the landowner for that.
It is his. You got to back up a bit. Right, there's a fence line along there, and the neighbor to the north has a few of his treasures down there in the corner of that fence line. That's the neighbor's. And then Mr. Larson's treasures start. And there's a white building sitting there. That was a trailer that is gone now, and that's approximately where he's looking at running the building, but he'd run it east and west orientation along, so it'd be, the 60-foot would be along the north property line. And then that lines it up with the existing driveway that's coming in. Where you see some of these older structures along the road, along the Southwest Jim River Road, there's several very older structures, and there's also a very large utility line going through their overhead, which came off the substation, and then he has quite a bit of underground utilities in that same area. So that limited his parking or his building area up in that, on that west side along the road. And he owns the house on the south end of the lot there.
And his entrance was going to be, he was going to go directly from the road into that building,
Yep.
was he not?
Yep, he has that north entrance that he wants to line up. And the other structures are basically going to be removed over time. They're non-functioning right now, the ones along the road. Okay.
So the driving reason for the variance, though, was the septic tank, correct?
Excuse me?
Septic tank was the real reason that he couldn't go further, or septic,
And-
excuse
and
me, the
utilities.
septic system and the
And
utilities
utilities.
is the reason that he was closer to that fence line.
Yep. His above ground and below ground utilities are very heavy in there. And granted, there's other spaces, but for him, it works out. He wants to have this net, and then it lines up with his proposed drive, or with the existing driveway. But the utilities drove a lot of it, because he wanted to have more of it on that road, but there's too many utilities there.
Any more questions for Mr. Garrity from the board? Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak in favor of this variance? Anyone in the audience like to speak against this variance? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move approval of the variance for James Larson as presented by Mr. Garrity.
Of minimum yard requirement.
Yep.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I think it's worthy to make note here that this is a variance, and you are crowding your 70 foot, and it's all okay. Keep that in mind as we move forward with variance discussion. These are permissible.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next one we have is the variance for Leonel Herrera.
Okay, this was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission based on findings of fact on July 10th for a maximum accessory structure size from 1,200 square feet with 12-foot sidewalls to build a 40 by 60 foot with 18-foot sidewalls or 2,400 square feet accessory structure in a moderate density rural residential district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as Lot L-1 and the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter, excluding Lot L-2 of the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter and excluding the north 660 feet of the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 24, Township 94, Range 54, hereinafter referred to as Vollen Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address is 45166 Bluff Road, Vollen, South Dakota. Okay, take a look at your mapping and where your site is here, but this is along the Bluff Road just east of Vollen. And in there, we made some zoning decision. We made some districts in there, and we did make a moderate density residential district in that area. So you've got the Vollen Road, or what we'd call the Vollen, and it heads over to the interstate road is on the north boundary, and then this Bluff Road is on the south boundary. About a year ago, a contractor came in, was building a building for Mr. Herrera and his wife, and they were going to build what we call a shouse. Okay, so there's a new term for you. So a shouse is a shed house. And generally, they've been making the shed part of it, or storage part of it, bigger than the house. But they have a bedroom, and they have a kitchen, and they have a living space, and sometimes they have even 3 bedrooms in those shouses. This was going to be a shouse. And they wanted to build so that they had room this winter for, or would have been 2017, to build this, and then they were going to come in right away this year in 2018 and finish the house. And so late November 15, 2017, I issued a building permit to allow them to build the structure with the plan that they were going to come in and we were going to finish the house part next year. Mr. Herrera died or passed away in January. And so the hardship is that I don't have anybody to help me finish the permit. I lost my applicant. And so there's the hardship. So what we have to do is that this application is to correct an administrative permit because our applicant is deceased and that they're not planning on continuing on with that house. They would like to just leave the accessory structure there. And I don't know what the widow's plan is in the future, but I think that's a reasonable hardship, and that the only alternative would be to go in there and remove that shed, and I don't think that's our intention at all. I believe it's a reasonable hardship. It's 2,400 square feet. It is very big, but it is also in a very rural residential district. And as of so far, I've not had anyone protest against it. I've had a couple people request, what is it? Are we sure it's not going to be commercial storage or commercial building? And it will not be. It will not be. It has to stay personal. Even if it sells, it's a residential district. They met the yard setbacks, they met the other setbacks, but that's where we're at with that. That's how that ended up.
So they originally had a building permit,
Yep,
and the executor of the building permit has died.
yep.
So,
So they're not going to finish the house part of the shed.
of the house.
Yep, of the house.
Questions for Mr. Garrity?
So you want to change it from a house to a shed?
Yep.
Okay.
And I need a variance on that because it's oversized. And the variance is for the maximum accessory structure size up to 2,400, well, it's 2,400 square feet with an 18-foot sidewall. But then that makes the structure legal. So hardship. It's beyond the applicant's control. The applicant had good intentions. We had a plan to do it as a house, so we had no intentions of making it be a shed at the time we started building it. So those are my hardships. Any other questions for me?
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the variance for Leonel Herrera? Is there anyone that would like to speak against the variance for Leonel Herrera? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we change the variance for Mr. Herrera from a house.
No, the variance is maximum accessory structure size. Approve a variance of maximum accessory structure size based on findings of fact of the Planning Commission. Okay, that's what we're doing. Is my intention was it was going to be that, but they never got it done. So now it becomes an accessory structure that's bigger than my maximum. So the variance is for maximum accessory structure size requirement, because we're going from 1,200 to 2,400. Okay, that makes sense?
Make me sure.
That's kind of tucked back in trees too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
That's kind of tucked back in trees.
Yes, yep. I mean, obviously, it's not, even the neighborhood hasn't an issue as long as it's private. But what you're offering the variance on isn't so much of what the structure could have been or where it is, it's what it is. And it has to be, you're making a motion to offer variance on a maximum accessory structure size requirement.
So that's the motion I made.
You'd like to?
Second.
So we have a motion to approve the variance of maximum accessory structure from 1,200 to 2,400.
Yep.
Discussion. Oh,
I just have a question or two. I'm Jim Claddick, and I live on...
Just a second,
Wait, wait,
okay, just a second. We're in a motion part here. Okay. What do you want to do?
we're in the process of voting.
Go ahead. I just have a question.
Does it apply to this?
Yes.
It's your call.
Withdraw motion, reopen.
I'll withdraw
It was open for public comment. There was 4 and against. Nobody stood up and raised a question. Were you here then, sir?
Yes, I was, and I was neither for or against, I just have a question.
Can you hold the question till comment period at the end of the meeting?
You can't make a comment based on.
Just a second,
Just a minute, Kathy, that's not for you to say.
withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw my motion.
We'll open it up for comments on either for or against the variance.
Well, I'm neither one of those.
Please come up to the podium and give us your name and address, please.
Yes. I'm Jim Claddick, and I live at 45152 Bluff Road. The first notice I got of this building was the last meeting that you had, or about 3 weeks ago, roughly. Okay, and I didn't realize it at the time, but according to the letter, it was as if the structure had not been built yet. Unfortunately, when I drove down the road, the structure had been built. Okay, so I was wondering how we got behind the power curve and we weren't notified that this was planned before the structure was built.
It was determined that it was initially going to be a house and a shouse, for lack of better terms. So the building permit was issued to build the shouse.
Okay,
And so
That's legal.
that in itself was legal.
so this process, it didn't have to go through this process, that is what you're telling me? Okay,
Because it was considered.
Because it was supposed to be a building or a structure with a house.
okay, I
And
understand
so they're not doing that anymore. So what we've got is the first part of the structure.
that. Okay,
That's what we've got, and we're cleaning up the administrative portion of it because it was a building permit that was originally issued. And now, since we're not going to continue to build a home, that's why we need the variance for this building that's there right now, because it's bigger than normally would have been approved for this area.
okay, my question still remains is, did we not go through the same process for the oversized shed as we do for a house?
No,
We do not.
Okay,
you do not, because it's got a house attached to it, that's why.
okay, all right.
Just to help you clarify, this district, when I issued the permit, the permit was for basically a house that looks like a shed. And we've started to call them shouses because more and more people are doing them. When my applicant passed away, then they didn't do the house part. So that went from being a house to an accessory structure. And when it becomes an accessory structure, it was not a legal accessory structure at that size. If they had built it at 1,200 square foot, we wouldn't have had to go through this. But 1,200 square foot's the maximum size an accessory structure can be in your district without a variance. And your accessory structure becomes that when you don't have a house and you don't live in it. Any structure that you don't live in becomes an accessory structure. That make sense?
It's a great point for the comprehensive rewrite, because your question is very good.
Yeah. And so we don't,
Letters kind of referred to this structure alone, not a house, and that's where I'm confused.
And you wouldn't have
Yep.
got a letter on the house because it's a house.
because the original intent was supposed to be a house.
Confusing, all right.
So that's where it would go through that process, and then that's when you start getting the letters for this, to make that building legal.
Thank you for your
Okay.
question.
Sorry if I interrupted, no.
No problem. So now I need a motion.
So I'll resubmit my motion
To,
for the high-end
approve the
maximum variance requirement, accessory structure size.
Second.
discussion.
Well, I think, from my point of view, down the road, we need to address this in the comprehensive rewrite, because this is, I mean, I go up where we hunt, up north, and there's lots of these up there. And they're pretty sizable buildings.
Patty, roll call vote.
Ray,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Deb.
Yes. Motion passes. Can I have a motion to go back into regular session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're back in regular session. Pat, you have next item,
Yep.
rezone from ag to planned unit development district, PUD.
This was, so this is the next session is for Carl Shank, and it's a request for a rezone. And so pursuant to Article 18 and 1809 of for findings of fact on July 10th, a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve a rezone from an agriculture district to a planned unit development district in Yankton County. Said property is legally described as the northwest quarter of Section 16, Township 93, Range 57, and the north half of the southwest quarter and the south half of the southwest quarter, excluding Tract B-233 of Section 16, Township 93, Range 57, and the south half of the southeast quarter of Section 16, Township 93, Range 57, hereinafter referred to as Ziskoff South Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address will be TBA of 430th Avenue, Tabor, South Dakota. As you can see from the findings that we put together, we talked about this quite a bit. We went through several different things there. The planned unit development, as far as the planning and zoning offices, from its standpoint, it feels like it recommended the planned unit development over a low-density development, because it would reduce our costs for infrastructure. It will offer covenant restrictions that all meet or exceed the regulations of the county zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. And with that strong declaration of covenants and conditions, it will allow future enforcement to be conducted by the homeowners association of the planned unit development. The property is also bordered by the Missouri River and public land to the south and by the Boy Scout camp to the west. Let's see, we did talk about access to the river area and access roads. We do have in your packets information regarding various affidavits and information regarding access to that development for your review and et cetera. So we had made the conclusion that the Planning Commission, that based on the evidence that was put forth, that access meets our requirements as a planning office and as a planning directive. So then everything else was met as far as signage, utilities, those types of things. And we do have what's called the subdivision preliminary plat that will come up after this that shows you what the lots are and how they'll be laid out and the infrastructure that goes with that. So it was recommended for approval for a rezone from an agriculture district to a planned unit development district. Any questions for me?
And that's about approximately 80 acres.
Approximately, yeah.
And it includes majority of 430th Avenue to the river, or to the lake, I should say.
That's in part of it, yep.
Yes.
After you leave the Boy Scout camp.
And then there was that little jog. Remember that little square?
And that's an existing lot that sits down there. And that also makes for access to the next lots that run across to the east.
Will this be portioned off in 20-acre lots?
No, the subdivision plan that comes up next shows it, but it's already all set, what we're gonna do. And and then also remember, this covenants and everything that's in there, the covenants are what I will utilize for any enforcement. And these are as strong, if not stronger, than the zoning ordinance. So the covenants are what we utilize for enforcement too. The lots in that subdivision are going to be anywhere from 13 up to 20, 30. Some lots are going to be 30 acres. We have 15 lots being proposed. I'd like to mention one more thing too about this. This was talked about during the hearing, but you do have some other subdivisions out there, and you also have some other planned unit developments out there, and one of them is Deerfield Estates, So that would be out there on Highway 50 and near where the motorcycle bike club is area. That one was started after zoning started. That now has a $4.1 million taxable valuation in that development there. One that's not a planned unit, but is still a development. It's under the R2 development district, is Marina Del Estates, and that one has a $13 million taxable valuation. So these are obviously very good for the county and its tax base and its potential of increasing tax income.
We've got total clarification on the issue of that little section of road that was.
We feel so. We have backing and personal contact from the title company. We have evidence from our various input from that have been provided to us by the applicant, and we feel that everything's there to meet our requirements.
Pat, you said there'd be some covenants required. Are there any provisions for like an association to be set up?
Yes, has to.
Okay.
Yep,
think
it's in
that'll
there.
be in the
This is
next
very
section.
good. This is very well done, and go ahead, again, it's in here too, but it is one of the things that they have to do. It's one of the conditions, and it has to be an active one. It has to be one I can work with, and that's what we do over at Deerfield too. And then, as we'll talk about in the subdivision ordinance part there too, we'll talk about how that works in terms of the future planning, but we'll settle this one first.
Okay.
Any other questions for me?
Oh, yeah, but we'll wait.
Okay.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this PUD?
Commissioners, I'm Ross Denherter, and I've been retained by Mr. Schenk to promote this application. Mr. Schenk apologizes. As many of you know, his health is somewhat volatile, and today he's not having a very good day. So I'm here on his behalf. This particular application for a variance, I think, is in keeping with the county's comprehensive plan for development. There is a development lying immediately to the east that's already...
Just point of order, I don't think it's a variance we're talking about today. We're talking about a rezone.
I'm sorry, rezone, correct. Thank you for correcting me on that. The PUD plan is sort of a self-developing development, and it's self-policing with good covenants. So we've took extra care to prepare good, understandable covenants that I think will help everybody get along with each other and minimize the input and staff time of the county in this particular development.
So I think those are going to come up in the next item on the agenda, which is the preliminary plan for the Lake Forest Estates.
Indeed, yeah, those
Yes.
all tie together with this.
So the fact that you're zoning this from ag to a PUD is all in preparation for this.
That is correct. They're separate actions by this commission, but they all tie to one development plan here. But this is, we can't have the approval of the preliminary plat until the rezone is in place first.
Correct.
Does anybody have any other questions regarding the rezoning? Or for the sake of time, I suppose I could also address some questions regarding the development.
I got to vote on them twice, so
I'll wait and address
Thank you.
those questions later then.
is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak against this PUD, rezoning from ag to a PUD? Any other questions from the commission? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the rezoning from ag to a planned unit development district for Carl Schenk.
Second.
Discussion.
Well, this is an outstanding area to place rural residents, and having read through carefully those covenants, it's very detailed.
Yeah.
And, looks to be like it should cut down a lot of issues going forward.
And I think one of the key things they brought up is the potential for increasing the tax base with with homes that are being built out there on area that's not arable. It's not, it's hills and it's trees and it's not currently.
I think to help you a little bit more, I think it also helps a bit, if we're looking at the long term, again, Mr. Kettering is talking about comprehensive plan, but I believe the comprehensive plan in time should take a good hard look at that western area all the way to from Highway 50 south all the way to our western border there as far as preserving that for residential. And now we'll have a big piece of it going into PUD. Maybe in the future we can put the rest of it in RT, and then we're being progressive about looking at that's where it's going to go, so we should be preparing for it. But this is a nice big piece to get started again that continues to put it into residential.
Good point. So we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Correction, let's back that up and say, let's have a roll call vote.
Ray,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. My mistake. All right, the next one is for the preliminary plan for Lake Forest Estates.
Okay, so preliminary plan just takes, now the subdivision ordinance kicks in. So the ordinance you've been working with is ordinance number 16. That's the zoning ordinance. Subdivision ordinance is ordinance number 20. So it talks about how are we going to lay something like this out. You're coming in with a bare piece of ground, what do we need to do? And it does a lot of things, and one of them is it starts out with the sketch plan, and when the applicant comes in, many times they are literally on a napkin. And then we in the office will approve those and work through that and get that to where we can get a surveyor to start laying it out for us. And then we end up with what's called a preliminary plat. And the preliminary plat is in front of you now on this. And this preliminary plat is the best shot at this present time of the developer to say, this is what I want this to be. Now, there's some real benefits to the developer sticking with this plan because each time they sell one of these lots, they don't have to go through the entire hearing process now. They can just come in, get their plat approved, they can make the sale after we approve this. So, as long as this preliminary plat stays the way it is, then any of the plats that come through on those 15 would be considered minor plats that could be approved promptly at the next commission meeting. So that's one big reason why the developers are working with it. A reason why we want it is what we talked about in my findings there. We want to know about infrastructure. I want to know where the utilities are. I want to know how we're accessing it. Are we doing easements? Are we doing right-of-ways? Are we doing, how big are the lots? Are we making sure we have buildable space? And that's all done through this subdivision ordinance. So Mr. Shank met all the requirements for that. And the Planning Commission recommended approval of the preliminary plat, which is just the preliminary plat. It doesn't prove each of those plats because you're going to find out you're approving real plats later. This is preliminary. Final plats are later.
Pat, is this a preliminary plan?
Or preliminary plan or plat, either way. Okay. We're calling it a plan here. And so it can be either way. That's interchangeable. And it's to Article 4 of Section 402 of the Yankton Subdivision Ordinance. So this is based on findings of fact of July 10th to approve the preliminary plat for Lake Forest Estates, Planned Unit Development District, a PUD in Yankton County. So said property is legally described as the northwest quarter of Section 16, the north half of the southwest quarter, and the south half of the southwest quarter, excluding tract B23 of Section 16, and the south half of the southeast quarter of Section 16, Range 93, or Township 93, Range 57. Hereinafter referred to as Ziskoff South Township, County of Yankton, State of South Dakota. E911 address will be appointed as the lots are sold, but will be off of 430th Avenue. And all the requirements were met. And as like say, we also have that checklist in the back, and then you actually see the preliminary plan that we're approving. Any questions for me? This is the second one we've done. This is a good deal. We're on our way.
Questions for Pat? Does anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this preliminary plan for Lake Forest Estates?
Again, Ross Denner for Carl Shank. As Pat indicated, essentially what you're doing is approving the master plan, just to make it easier for the developer as each individual lot is sold. It allows us to skip the Planning and Zoning Commission each time. However, we can't change the covenants, we can't change the lot design. We're limited to this plan. If there's going to be a change to the master plan, it has to be brought back to the Planning and Zoning and brought back before this board for approval of the comprehensive change of the entire subdivision. So I hope that gives you guys some comfort moving forward. It streamlines the process, but only if we commit to what we're showing you today.
And there are 15 lots, I believe, including that one tiny little one.
Yeah, inclusive of the tiny one. The tiny one has its own legal description already. However,
Yes.
for the sake of convenience, we'll give it a lot description here because its description is a little strange.
But I see 20 acres is a predominant size. We've got a couple
On
30s,
average.
30.
Yeah, there's a couple that are as big as 38,
Right.
but if you average them all out, it's just shy of 20 acres per lot. If you guys will recall, the middle chunk of this is what was the subject of that quiet title action that we worked through this board last year. This is the next step in that process.
Okay,
Any additional questions?
not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak in favor of this preliminary plan? Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak against this preliminary plan? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I motion that we accept the preliminary plan for Lake Forest Estates.
Second?
Discussion?
Okay, Pat. It takes me a while. We're accepting the plots the way they set right
Yep.
here. So somebody comes in here, for instance, and buys lot 4, it's 30 acre .27. They cannot split that without coming back before us again and changing that.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I read about 80 pages of that dad blasted company, my brainless potato soup. So, I don't know how to present my question, so I'll pass.
Just remember, you can't, everything that's there, roads and everything, someone can't come in and say, I don't want to buy that whole thing, I only buy 15 acres of it. They can't, they have to come back in front of the whole board. We'd have to reissue the whole thing. If anything changes on this, it has to come back, anything. No subdividing, no changing, no moving lot lines, and no changing uses either. Like Mr. Denherter said, they can't all of a sudden start raising, building trailers down there either, because the covenants say you can't. That's all stipulated. Like I say, the covenants for a residential district are stronger than what we request on our zoning, and that's everything from accessory structures to use.
For the sake of the public hearing, numbers of animals have been defined,
Yep.
Everything
Yes, yes, yep.
to include cats, as I recall.
I mean, it is, it's really broke. And so any question that may come along, if a resident is living in there and they want to contest that, we're going to go back to the covenant. And we will, and say this is what it is. And that's what we do currently at our current PUDs also.
Pat,
As long as they're more restrictive than Yankton County zoning.
Pat, yeah, just a hypothetical, could they buy two plots, a 38 and a 30 or whatever?
Yes.
Put them back together?
Yes,
They could?
yep.
Okay.
They can do that, but they can't split them or move the lines unless they come in and ask. But nothing administrative, so anything can be done, but nothing administrative after this point. It has to stick what they say.
And to follow, I think, Gary's train of thought, they can't combine them together and then reduce their taxes because now they don't
Yeah.
have
No.
residential.
No. Right. They can't combine them together because they'd have to go through a plat process, and if they go through that, they're back in front of us, and we say, what's this? This is under a PUD. Yep. You remember, you got it back in your head there, Ray, or are you okay?
I'm okay.
All right. Okay.
So I believe we had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next is plat for Carl Schenk,
Yes.
Lot 1.
Okay, so I have a PUD now, I have a rezone, I have a preliminary plat that's approved, and so now I have Lot 1. Off of this preliminary plat, platted just like the preliminary was, it's a request to actually plat Lot 1.
Okay?
And no, that's, no comments, nobody said anything negative or positive.
So that's just one of 15 that is being platted now.
We're just doing number 1.
Yes.
Yep, 1 of 15, lot number 1.
Anybody want to speak in favor of this plat? Would anyone like to speak against the plat? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Move approval of the plat, Lot 1, Lake Forest Estates.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, Pat, you got the next one.
Okay. Okay,
Yep,
all righty.
floor is yours.
So a little bit behind, so we'll move along here. I have requested in some of our public hearings and during planning commission to take a look and review Article 6, 7, and 8 regarding Section 605, 705, and 805, which is accessory structures. We're doing an awful lot of variances per year on those. And I know I just did one, but we're doing an awful lot of variances, and I believe the way that we have it set in the ordinance has been too difficult to enforce. It's not necessarily enforceable because we have such various size lots out there on various sites and various districts. So if you have your districts say they're supposed to be a half acre and an acre and 5 acres, but they're not, they're all over the place. And so I'd like to take another look at this, and we amended it back in 2006. And so why don't we take another look at this? I think we need to compare ourselves a little bit more with the city of Yankton. And we need to take another look at our metrics, what we're using. Right now, we just simply say a size, 800, 1,200, 2,000. And we have too many variables out there in our lot sizes to make a very rigid, just size fit our requirements. The other issue is that we're watching and seeing the trend out there, and the consumer trend out there is for bigger sheds. They're getting bigger campers, they're getting bigger boats, they're getting bigger toys. And we need to be aware of that, otherwise we're always fighting this issue. So I'd like to take a look. It would be the same way we did the signs for Highway 52. We could start with some public meetings, get some input from the public, and start building on it, start changing the language a little bit, and go through the change process.
I think that sounds like a good idea. I mean, being on the zoning commission, I know we see variances for buildings, and we want people want large buildings for the various reasons that you've said.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't always be approved. But I think the public's input is necessary for all these. I mean, I think they would be, provide good insight as to what was really needed out there.
Yeah. take another look at it. It's been 10 years.
2005 exactly. It was in 2005, so it's actually
Was it?
been
Okay. Yeah.
13
See, so-
years.
Are these same implications going to be applied in ag zone districts?
Yep.
Much has changed since 2005 there also?
But this would take a look at specifically lists, and let me, but I do agree, we do have to take a look at that whole program too, but that's, at least for right now, I want to work on this. This to me, this particular ordinance change is the hot button right now, that we're working so much with. Almost every meeting, we have one of these, and we're not, I don't think we're satisfying. We have a dual purpose here. One is that we have citizens that are in the county that depend on zoning to protect, to say, this is what the rule is, this is what we're saying, this is what we're gonna do. And then they feel like all of a sudden we're not following that. And I think that when we're not following it, let's stop, take a look and see why we're not following it. What's happening? What's changing? What's making it different? And that's what I'd like to do with this one,
So what do you want, just approval to
to start.
start your meetings? And get a group of citizens together and have scheduled meetings as you
Yep.
did with the sign ordinance?
Yeah. And I'd need one commissioner to volunteer to be the liaison for that shows up at the meetings. All of you can come, everybody can come, but I need one to be my liaison for that. So whoever you do with that, that's fine.
Okay.
We would start right away.
And do you have a proposed night?
Yep, I propose Mondays. Probably the last one of the month. That's the only one I got open, besides Friday, and I'm not going to give you Friday.
Well, I think we have unanimous approval here. Anybody against having this group?
Are you gonna advertise for people from the public to
Yes.
volunteer to be on the
Yep.
committee?
Yep. Do a general meeting in the beginning, and then from that, see who wants to be active for each of the meetings, and go through the normal process that we do for ordinance changing. Yep. Find the stakeholders, who wants to be involved the most, who's in there, who's the stakeholders, and then develop a good policy. I think we have to look at several things. There's several different metrics one can use for this. They don't have to be based on just physical size. There's property size. There's several metrics that we should take a good look at and see what makes the best sense for us.
Sounds good.
Well, I'd like to serve on it.
All right, there you got your
Okay,
commission.
there I got my commissioner. Okay. All right, that's what I need. That doesn't need a motion or anything in that regard. Okay, very good,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we're on to the 510 item of installing a veterans parking spot. Mr. McDonald, Mr. Feifel.
Midwest Striping wants to, well, they approached Jeff on this about setting up a parking sign reserved for veterans here at the government buildings, either in the two parking lots. And we're letting you know that they have offered to put this sign up and mark the spot. and-
They volunteered to put it up in any location that we would like. They would put it up with their own post, their own manpower, and donate everything, no charge.
And you were already planning on restriping the parking lot?
Yes, yeah. That's why when I talked to him about restriping the parking lot, he came to us with this.
And they've got
Yep.
they've got another one, and it says it's a super parking, or superhero parking reserved for vets, active military, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and search and rescue personnel. Thank you for serving, and it has their little donated sign on
I
it.
think the reserved for veterans is good.
Yeah, it's up to the commission, whoever.
We see them all over town. We're
Yeah.
seeing those reserved for veterans all over town.
Yeah.
You're gonna put one in front, one in the back?
That's up to the commissioners,
I'd like to
wherever,
see one in the front, one in the back.
okay? Just have to discuss where we want them then and have them placed.
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea.
Next to the handicap, so it's easy for them to get entrance,
Okay?
would be my suggestion.
Yeah, right towards the front here, you know?
One over there and one over there.
Probably put one over right here, so it's right off the sidewalk, heading up towards the Veterans Memorial.
I think the 2 parking lots.
Yeah, there's a spot right there outside.
There's a handicap on either side,
Okay.
so we can put it over there. Yeah. That'll be fine.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, we'll let them know.
Make it happen.
Okay,
Thank you for doing that.
no problem.
Mr. McDonald, can you hand this to me?
Again, I want to compliment you on the condition of the yard and the building.
I guess while he was up there, I could have knocked you out. Go ahead and come back. We'll knock out his report on our buildings and the leakage.
Well, since arriving, obviously, in my short time that I've been here, that we've had water leakage mainly on that north side of the building where the false windows are over there now. And obviously, we all understand that we've had excessive amounts of water. Today, we had Blackburn Basements here taking a look at some of my findings, and they agree with a big majority of what I'm showing them. Basically, they did a pour, and then they let it dry, and then they did another pour on top. Well, that's below the ground level. So there's nothing sealing the 2 concretes together. They're held together firmly, probably with, pieces of rebar and things, but that will not stop water from leaking between the 2 pours. So they came today and they're gonna look at getting us a proposal, and I'll check with another person that was, as far as basement renovation and sealing in the meantime, but they're talking about exactly what I'm thinking is they have to clean the outside face, remove the dirt, clean the outside face, and then put a sealant on the outside so that the water doesn't wick through those seams when we have
Because it is leaking
groundwater.
downstairs.
Yes.
At the mall.
Yep. And then there's also that false, where they put the tin over those windows, the seams on those interlock, but the tops of those seams are not sealed. So when we have a driving wind, the water runs up, runs into those seams, and runs down. And then we're getting more water there also. That I can take care of pretty easily. The other portion is something that, and the worst part about this is, and I've got some pictures here, is they did like a false stucco on that concrete, so that either has to be sandblasted off or ground off before you put any kind of a sealant on there, otherwise it's not gonna work. So like I said, they're in the process of getting us a quote. They should have it within a couple of days on what it would cost to do that.
Any other buildings that are leaking?
We still have a small leak over at the extension office. We've had some leaks over at the EMS. I think I've got those solved. We had some of the rubber roofing coming loose. I sealed those up. That one, we had that 6 inches in about 20 minutes. We did have some at the safety center, but luckily I went up that same evening. What happened was there's just enough leaves collected around the downspouts because they're inside the roof, and it plugged them up. So I went up and dug all those out, and then it was gone. But there was 6 inches of water on that roof, which was a lot of weight. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Paul, cell tower.
I got a couple things. I don't know if you're familiar, the picture I sent you probably wasn't a real good one of the site. It's the old Dennis Spielmeyer place out on 433 and South Dakota Highway 50. It used to be the county civil defense tower where we had the repeater. There are a couple pages that kind of shows you That's the location is what I sent you, but on the second page is the actual tower that's out there. It's by the big blue water tower west of town here. Many years ago, when they redid Highway 50 and made it a road coming into town on that way, the construction, from my understanding, what I was told, the construction company that did the work put the tower up. And then they didn't want to take it back down, they gave it to the county. And the highway department, many years ago, used it for a while. People way before my time used it for the civil defense repeater tower. We're paying a land rent where the tower is set at. Right now, we're currently paying $1,800 a year on that, just to have the tower sit there, even though we own it, we have to insure
We
it.
don't use it.
We don't use it anymore. Our repeater tower now is sitting on top of Napa, on the new facility out in Napa Junction. So what I'm asking you guys, as I was talking with Rob, is that I'm asking you guys to surplus this piece of property, and then we'll need to get 3 people, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, 3 people to give a valuation on it, and then whether we gotta sell it, if it's worth anything. The cell tower, or the radio tower people that I talked to said that it's so old that it's corroding between the bolts. If you take it down, putting it back up is probably not gonna be a thing. The other thing is that if we have to remove it, it's real easy to push it over. The hard part is digging that great big cube of concrete out from underneath of it. So we'll have a lot of an expense tied up into, they figured the height of the tower is 68 feet. It's about a 15 by 15 by 15 foot concrete block buried under the ground to hold that freestanding tower. So, and again, that's an estimate. I talked with Brian. Is Brian in here? He's willing to go out and dig it out, but that's going to take a lot of time, and monies that so my suggestion in my notes, I says, let's offer it to the guy that owns the land. It's a new person now. Robert Oddsmore, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He bought the place from Mr. Fieldmeyer. The rent is going to go up next year. To what, I don't know at this time, but we have no use for it. So I said in the notes, just get rid of it. But to do the way it's supposed to be, well, you guys will have to surplus it, and then we'll have to get an estimated cost by 3 individuals. Is that correct, Rob? And then decide whether when we're going to sell it, we can offer it for 0. We'll have to get that details worked out. But I guess the big thing tonight would be is to declare it surplus, and then we can move forward with that. Would that be a correct statement, Rob?
That'd be correct.
And then the 3 quotes are to dismantle it? Is that what we're looking for?
What the value of the tower is sitting there right now.
Oh, okay.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that if you propose to sell it to him for $1, like it says, then he's responsible for that concrete?
It's his tower then. It's his property. He can do whatever he wants with it.
Okay.
If we get rid of it. And we can't offer it for $1. I mean, legally, we got to go through the process as I had mentioned. But we need to surplus it first, then go. I mean, it might only be $1 in the end, but I don't know. But we don't need it. I have it insured under my insurance over at the office. But, well, in case it falls over and crushes a car or something, it's still our tower. So we need to get rid of it.
Because they're paying rent on it and insurance.
Yeah, well, the rent's paid.
Okay.
But next year, I'd like to get rid of it here as quick as we can, and I'll work with Rob through the process.
Make a motion that we declare this tower surplus.
You see how tall it is?
68 feet.
68 feet.
Yep.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Epp to declare this tower surplus. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Louis can knock it down.
All in favor of making the radio tower surplus, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
This is the next go around here. I got 2 items tonight. So what we'll do is I'll get with Rob. Who do we select?
Real property owner in Yankton County.
So is it basically up to these guys or somebody that I find, or?
Up to the commission.
What was that?
You have to appoint 3 people that are real property owners in Yankton County to appraise this.
Can't have a tower company look at it and tell me what it's worth?
You can get it appraised officially, you could, but.
Okay.
And then you get an independent person, so we can come back later and find somebody that's willing to come up with the value, because you can get an appraisal. You can find
just their own, based on their own knowledge, their value.
1, 2, 3.
Let's see, are there 3 people in the audience that'd like to do this?
Equalization office, they're used to estimating value.
1, 2, 3.
We'll find 3 people.
Okay. All right, the next item up for my discussion is that I've been working with the townships, township boards, after all the heavy rains in June, July. We've put together a damage assessment. If you turn to page, I believe it's page 2, or maybe it's 3. Page 3 in the back, these are the dollar valuations that we've kind of come in with so far. There's still extra costs, and I talked with the state. We have no idea whether it's going to even make. We've met the threshold. The threshold for Yankton County is $83,700 and some odd and change. We've exceeded that, but now to go forward, we need to do a declaration for disaster, or for basically to get, if FEMA does come in. The state needs $1.3 to $1.5 million overall, and right now I don't know if they're gonna. The biggest problem they're having right now is if they can tie the storms that happened up north to the storms that happened down here. The Weather Service, the last I had heard, is the storms that happened up, and when I mean by north, up by Aberdeen and that area, was a different storm than the one we got our rain on. So that's 2 different events. They can't be tied together.
By Joe, Clay County and U County got hit real hard too.
Right, Clay County's about $250,000, Turner County's about $300,000. But altogether, we're still less than $1 million. But that doesn't mean that they're still working numbers. But we need to do, what I'm asking you today is to pass this declaration. Rob drew it up. The one I sent you was not even close to being right. I was just winging it that day I was doing it. But we needed to get something so that at least they could put it on your guys' agenda. They have a new copy. They sent it over today. Deb's got it, I believe, in front of her. We need this declaration. We'll send, all this stuff has actually been sent to Pure already to be put into the thing, but we need this paperwork to go along with it.
That's all for roads?
Roads, bridges, culverts, anything with the townships. I got some of the stuff from Brian. He's still got other things to be added, but the big thing was to get stuff in and started and make sure that we went over the 83,000. Because if we didn't, if we didn't get to that dollar amount, it wasn't worth the time of putting it in. Yes.
You've got 100,000 on here, but any idea at all, just a guess of what it could be?
If I had to make an I'd say we're pretty close, about 2.25. 225,000, I think, overall, after everything is done. The big thing that's not in this packet, and what you don't see, is the labor to do it all. The townships worked really hard to get prices and all this stuff, what it's going to cost, but they don't have their labor costs in a lot of these. So that still has to be added into that. And they're working on that, but right now, this was what we had to start with. It puts us over the threshold to making that, being able to send off to Pier. So if I had to guess, it'd be about 2.25.
Okay, so, question, more comments, Ray?
I was gonna move to approve the resolution requiring emergency.
Okay, I need to read this resolution. Do we need to approve it first and then read it, or?
I think you should read it.
Well, no, we have to read it.
Right, before you approve it.
Okay, so this is Yankton County Resolution Number 18-5, resolution declaring an emergency, flooding, 2018. Whereas Yankton County, South Dakota has received above normal precipitation in June and July 2018, which has caused severe damage to its county and township roads. And whereas Yankton County has evaluated all available resources for funds needed to make necessary improvements and repairs to said roads. And whereas all resources for funds were exhausted prior to June 16, 2018. And whereas the total cost for repairs and improvements are expected to be far in excess to what local resources are able to provide. And whereas the resulting damage and destruction will endanger and threaten the health, safety, and welfare of the public and the financial stability of the local governing units and the utility companies and power companies generally, now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Yankton County Commissioners does hereby declare a flooding emergency dated this 7th day of August, 2018. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
Is this discussion still open?
Just a second. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
You had 100,000 on here, and you took a guess at
225.
There's $158,000 worth of
If you look
damages
at
there.
the second page there, it
Yeah,
says
I know, but
159.
225,000 doesn't seem like enough.
Well, and to be honest with you, until all the paperwork's in, I'm just guessing. I mean, and if the thing is, if the stuff doesn't get in, this is all we got registered. I mean, unfortunately, we've been working with the townships. It's been a learning experience for both of us, especially with the new FEMA requirements that are come out that we're trying to cope with. But, I mean, it could be way, I mean, I have no idea, you know, until we get all the figures in and all that stuff.
Could be in the millions.
Yeah, who knows? I'm not gonna say. Yeah. And I know Brian, like, still has some stuff that he needs to get on here. And these are, like Brian, I believe, were just costs of expenses, or not the labor.
And you said labor's not on there yet,
Right,
so.
yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Just an FYI, and I'm going to get out of here. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be having a meeting, and I would like to see if one of you two can make it. We're going to have a township meeting with all the townships and with Brian, with District 3, to talk about pre-disaster mitigation grants that the townships and maybe the county on this disaster, we can maybe get some grant money to help offset some of the costs. But
Any idea when that is?
no. I just actually got done with District 3 about 20 minutes before I got here that we have this meeting.
On that meeting that you're having on the 20th or 21st,
20th, I believe.
20th.
is that the only one?
No, I sent you an email back. We're having another one later in the year for those who couldn't make it the 20th.
Thank you.
Yep. But I think it's important to know what's going on. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Ms. Hoffman, yes. You're here to request transfer of property discarded as a nuisance
Yes,
from Yankton
correct.
County to the town of Utica.
Yes, correct. My name is Sherry Hoffman. I'm the town board president for the town of Utica. I was doing some research recently and realized that several of the properties within the city of Utica are actually owned by Yankton County. Several years ago, and I want to estimate maybe 2015 or 16, we did declare those properties nuisance items and did want to have those torn down. We were waiting, we realized that they were behind in taxes and didn't quite know the full process. Worked with our attorney, who has since not represented us anymore. So I did have 3 properties placed in your packets.
Right.
The first 2 clearly state through Beacon that they are owned by Yankton County. The third does not, but it has been no taxes paid for it in that same length of time. So I don't know that I can speak about that one. And if I can't, that's perfectly fine. We can address it later.
It's in the process. It won't, I think, till the first of the year, until it comes to the first of the year, it won't become ours.
Sure.
Truly.
That's not a problem. I can either, even if you wanted preemptive,
So-
great. If not, if I have to come back, I'd be happy to do so.
I'm aware of the 2 of them because I talked to our maintenance supervisor who is over there taking care of these places, I guess, mowing.
Right. Yes, that did start this year. Yes, correct.
Just the 1 or the 2?
Both. Yes.
So the double wide trailer is an eyesore.
Absolutely.
It looks like it's even a,
There are several areas that cause us concern with gaps for obviously moisture and snow and things, and then also wild animals.
yeah, wild animals. What about, kids breaking in there? I mean, all sorts of things. I mean, it looks
Correct.
just like,
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Probably January or December, GOED came out with a program, and it was offered, and I think we sent letters to the county.
Or township.
Town in the county, suggesting that if they had dilapidated properties, the GOED had funds to be applied for to tear those properties down and clean them up.
When I read that, I did understand that they had to be part of the community's main street kind of program, and then you had to have a plan to build something. And since these were residence items, I didn't think that that would apply to us. But I did get that letter. Thank you.
It would have applied to it.
Would it have? Okay.
is it gone? Is it still
I can't
available?
tell you for sure.
You said January of this year?
Yeah, I think so, that's my guess.
Okay, I can certainly do some research on
Towards
that.
the end of last year.
Okay.
From what the first go-through in the program, because of the two covenants that you talked about,
Mhm.
it didn't attract as much attention as they thought it might. And then I believe they came back with the same program and reduced that requirement to replace.
Mm.
Because they're,
Yeah.
and today on TV, there was a program about somebody in Detroit coming in and cleaning 30 square blocks up.
The blighted homes.
Nice.
Yeah, just to do what you're doing.
Yes, that is our current plan. We would love to be able to clean those homes up.
Great thing to do.
And I know too that Habitat for Humanity is looking for lots, you know, and I can't say that this would be naturally one they'd like, but I mean, we've asked the smaller towns if they have a lot that they would like Habitat to come in and, you know, build a house on. So, I mean, before I knew that you were looking at this,
Sure.
I'm on the building committee for Habitat, and I was actually thinking of these very same things, and I was talking to the treasurer and the auditor about, you know, how do you go about transferring these things? How do you go about legally getting them to belong to somebody else? So I commend you on wanting to do something. Do you have a plan? Like, for example, this double wide, what are you going to do?
Currently, we're going to take it away, dispose of it properly through whatever means are necessary. I need to do some research on that, how to properly
have
dispose
wheels?
of it. It does, but it's also so dilapidated inside that I would be concerned about it I need to find someone who can do it properly, honestly. I can't make a bigger mess for the environment than it's already going to be.
So once you get it off there, then what's your plan?
My plan is to turn into a green space for now, until we can discuss or decide what's best for that particular lot. Now, it's only a 60-foot lot, so to me, in my head, and not knowing a lot about size proportion, that it may not make a great spot for a home, because I have an alley that runs along the north side of it. So that causes a little bit of, how do I properly position a home in that small area? So that would be, right now, to me, a green space makes sense, and with something in the future to be determined, perhaps.
Let's talk about the second property.
The one place that has a trailer house.
That's what we're just
The
talking about.
land is delinquent, but the trailer house taxes aren't, just this year.
Oh, really? Okay. I know that they'd
Really?
had some
Can't, as I,
charitable donators for
the
that. So,
treasurer's office can't do anything with the trailer until later on this year.
do you have a estimate?
No, I don't. You'd
Okay.
have to talk to the treasurer.
Sure, absolutely. Let me write it down.
But the land taxes are delinquent.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's see.
If you're interested in researching the GOED thing, give me a call, and I'll find the number.
That would be great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay,
So-
that's the double
Yes.
wide.
Yes, and so we'll move to the next property. I roughly gave it an address of 310 Main Street. Know that this house has never had a house number on it. It was in this condition when I moved into town 18 years ago. So it is completely boarded, as you can see, just from this one angle. It is my understanding that there is no running water to it. Obviously, there has to be services, obviously, for sewer. So we do have a gentleman who does set traps inside and catches wild animals. So obviously, I'm excited to have that gone, because I don't need any more in town.
So that's the one that's on
Yes, it'll
The
be a
hard
picture that
house.
looks like this, correct, yeah. That's the one I labeled Hard House, correct.
Hard House.
Yes.
Do we know anything about that one, Patty? Is that one? Sees that they haven't paid any taxes.
There's actually two of them that I just talked with the treasurer with, and that we really can't do anything with until later on in the year.
Because of the
Do you remember
house.
which two they were?
The 205 First Street and the 211 Second Street.
Got it, okay. That's the third one I said I wasn't sure
Okay,
if
so
the
this
county owned it.
310
Main Street.
is free and clear. Is that correct?
As I have, those, the two I mentioned were the only ones that I knew of.
Yeah, and when I was talking to the treasurer, she also told me about one of those, and I believe it's this one that's not encumbered. So, state's attorney, do we have the ability just to, I think I have the law here. It says the governing board of a political subdivision may sell, trade, loan, destroy, or otherwise dispose of any land, structure, equipment, or other property which the governing body has by appropriate motion. And
It would be the same, you just declare it as a surplus, it can be a public use, and then for whatever terms you want to give it to another political subdivision, you can do it. And there's no rules, can be free, can be whatever you want it to be.
And your plan for this one is?
Currently to be a green space, I am interested, it does sit next to the city shed, and I'm interested in replacing the city shed and might do it that way, but I need to speak to the rest of the board because that's just my personal thought right now. But for sure, we're going to leave it as a green space until we make a final decision.
One less thing for you to mow.
Should have called 3 weeks ago.
We mowed for years before, so I understand completely. And we did take all the trees around it down. They were much worse, so.
So all we need then is a motion to make this residence
Surplus it?
Yep, and transfer it to the city of Utica.
Terms you want it to be.
Do we know for sure though that we can do that with this last one? I know those other two are still late, but
Yeah, the only thing with rodeo, you're gonna get, we don't know anything yet, we're in the process of tax deeding in, or we're in the redemption.
So we can declare it excess.
So just to be clear, it's because of the first house, only the land is yours. The house is still somewhere else.
But I think you could declare a nuisance, like you said, file an action against the property owner, and then that's how I think you're gonna take it.
Okay. I think we already have, but I will double check, and if we have not, we'll do that. So thank you.
So we can, what we need to do then is declare the residence at 310 Main Street in Utica surplus. Can I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. I would like to say that if we do this, that you carry through with what you've said as far as getting rid of the building and making it a green space.
They already have bids for
And
that,
doing
yes.
anything just to improve Utica.
Absolutely. We already have bids for all the pieces. I'm just waiting for that to become ours so we can take care of it. So
We'd like to get it back on the tax rolls, okay?
I agree.
All right.
Probably vote, and then decide how you want to transfer for anything, for free, for whatever. Because you declared it a surplus.
Okay.
And vote on it, and then you'll determine whether you make a motion to want to transfer to the Utica Township.
Okay. So we're declaring it surplus. I have a motion to declare the 310 Main Street house in Utica surplus. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, so now we need to determine how we're going to transfer it to you.
Give it to her.
So, well, right now, we're not getting any money from it. And it's costing us labor and gasoline to go over there and mow it. So does anyone have a recommendation here?
Yeah, I recommend we give it to them.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Assume all liability as of the date of the gift.
Thank you. We would appreciate that.
So the motion is that we gift it to you, that you take care of it, and you're responsible for its liability from this day forward.
Correct. We will add that to the list of city property and have it on our insurance roll.
Discussion by the commission. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, you have a house.
Thank you. And we'll be back for the other two at the appropriate time. So I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
for doing it.
Yep.
Can I get your number from you about that property? Or
660-4303.
Also, planning District 3 was active.
Well, yeah, they can do it too. Yeah, they'll be the ones that act.
I did see one from them earlier. Like, again, I read it with just being a main street improvement, so that didn't really benefit us at that time. So one more time with your number, please.
660-4303.
Sounds good. I'll give you a call if I need to. Thank you so very much, everyone.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next thing we have, did we do this Hoffman transfer? Oh, that was just her. Okay. Rob, you're next. Variance and conditional use procedures.
Oh.
Yes.
Currently in our zoning ordinance, it's a 2/3 vote for conditional uses and variances. The law does allow if, in our zoning ordinance, we can, on a conditional use, change the percentage. So a conditional use does not have to be a 2/3. It could be whatever, 51%. It can be a majority, it can be whatever the zoning ordinance states. Does that make sense? A variance has to stay at a 2/3 vote, and a 2/3 vote is 66%. When you have 5, it's 4, right, which is 80%. 3 is 60%, so we're right below the 66% and 2/3. But the answer is, for a variance on a Board of Adjustment, it says it in our zoning ordinance, but the law provides it has to be a 2/3 vote. But in 2016, the law changed and allowed zoning ordinances for conditional uses to have different percentages. So you could, if you would amend the zoning ordinance, allow conditional uses to be approved by a different percentage. The percentage could be whatever, a majority, 3/5. It could be whatever it wanted to be amended, but a conditional use can be changed to a different percentage, where a variance cannot.
And you're speaking of for the Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment.
But the only way to do that is to
Amend the
ordinance.
zoning ordinance,
Okay.
yep. So the only reason I'm saying it is there is the ability to make that change. And if we're making other changes, maybe that's a change we want to make, maybe it's a change we don't want to make. I don't know if that's something we want to propose, but the law does allow us to make that change.
You said that law was 2016?
2016, it was amended, yeah.
The current ordinance is 4.
2/3.
So that would mean 4 would have to.
4 out of 5, yeah. Or if 3 show and 2 are missing, it's 2 out of 3, right? So you have 2 people missing for whatever reason, conflict or somebody's sick.
If somebody's missing, then it's percentage of voting.
It's percentage of voting. It's who's there. So it would be
2 out of 3
2/3.
would be 66.
And then the number is, it has to be 66%. But when you have 5, it's technically 80%. Sorry, that make
Okay,
sense?
yeah.
And I'm not saying it's something we're doing or whatever, I just had to bring that up.
That's an FYI, right?
Yep, FYI.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Time to go into executive session. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Going to executive session. Just a reminder, if anybody is opposed,
I oppose, yeah.
okay. Let it be known, it was 3-1. If you're going to sign up, I hope you've signed up on the board to talk after the meeting. We're picking it up as soon as we come back from executive session.
Bye-bye.
Yes, there's no sound question and answer period. You have that? Can I have a motion to go back into regular session?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes. We're in regular session.
I would make a motion that we put together a committee of 3 or 4 people to review compensation.
I'll second it.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so now we're going to go to the public comment period. And we've got 4 people signed up. During the public comment portion, commissioners are only able to listen to comments and are unable to take action due to open meeting laws. There will be no debate or discussion from the commission during this time. If a matter needs future action, it may be placed on an upcoming agenda at the discretion of the chairman. All participants are required to print their name on the sign-in sheet, address the commission from the podium, and state their name for the record. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes for public comment. So I believe the first one is Christy Schultz.
Hi, I'm Christy Schultz. I served on the Yankton County Planning and Zoning Board for 12 years, and I spent at least 2 years working on the comprehensive plan. And on 12/12 of 2017, you basically took away the county planning board's pursuing that issue and assigned it to a committee, you know, kind of limiting public input, because whoever's on the committee is going to control the narrative, the information on what goes into the comprehensive plan. And I would just like to know if we have an update on what's been done on that, because on that 12/12 of 2017 meeting, you're on chapter 3. And there are, I believe, 25 chapters in that book. And also, District 3, when they were explaining to us what the comprehensive plan, what the purpose of it was, that it was basically the backbone of our ordinance, and that you base the ordinance on that comprehensive plan. So you really should not have anything written in the county zoning ordinances that are not supported by that comprehensive plan. And so I guess I would really want to know why we are making changes to the ordinance without first finishing the update of the comprehensive plan. And also, I would like to know who or what spurred the interest in changing the current 2/3 vote needed to change a conditional use permit, to approve a conditional use permit, or to approve a variance, since that seems to be a law that has been functioning quite well as it stands. And I was wondering why you are bringing that up to a change now. And I believe that any major changes such as these should be brought to a public vote instead of written in the tiny, tiny little print that no one can read in the public notices in the paper. And not everybody gets the Yankton paper. So I think it would, if you're going to make a major change in legislation such as that, that affects virtually every other piece of legislation that comes before you, I think it would need to be brought to a public vote.
Time.
Thank you.
Robert Frame.
Yes, I'm Robert Frame. I live over by Vollen. And I've been a resident for Yankton County for 71 years. And kind of keep track of what's going on sometimes. And things get all huffy and puffy and everybody gets all up, bent out of shape for different things. I mean, my God, years ago, the commissioners actually put asphalt roads out, because when I was going to school, went to school on gravel roads. And my God, some of these radicals, they put asphalt roads on it. And the only problem was asphalt roads require some maintenance too, just as well as gravel roads. And somewhere in the last 40 years, up until, I want to say the last year, people had seemed to forgot about upkeep and maintenance on our roads. And the road coming into Yankton that comes across a bridge, it's in pretty darn rough shape, and it needs to do. And just the other day, I went up on a Royal, up 301, I believe it is. And, you know, it is in very good condition. And I visited with some coffee klatch thing, and God, most of the people are really happy with it. The only complaint I heard in the whole works was that the line that they put on there, the temporary line, wasn't straight. That was the only complaint I heard about it. So I think it's been working pretty good, and I'm hoping some more of these get done too. So I'm hoping that gets done. And if people can get together and cooperate and look and see what actually needs to be done, which has been done in the last 3-4 years. They're actually getting some things done, and we need to continue this. It's very, very important that these things keep taken care of, because the roads are been so far, and it's great to see them now. So I'm glad. Just want to say that I think people have been doing a damn good job getting things done, getting things started, going in the right direction. And I think the people would hope that they keep on. Thank you.
Dan Clemish?
Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Clemish. I'm here to ask that you guys consider moving the public comment session to sooner in the meeting. The reason I say that is because there's a lot of people here waiting to be able to address this board, maybe about any concern they have, and a lot of us sat here for 25 minutes while you guys were going through the executive session. I think the public comment section earlier in the meeting, like the city does and like so many other boards, would be something that you guys could look at doing. I'd humbly request that you do that. And then second, the budget meetings that you guys have, I'd ask that they be recorded. They're probably the most important meetings that this commission has throughout the year, but they're not recorded. And if there's somebody who can't make this meeting, they're not able to see how you guys budget each and every item. So I humbly ask, in the spirit of an open government and government transparency, that you look at recording these budget meetings so people who can't attend the meeting can view them. Thank you very much.
Did our fourth one, Louis Johnson, leave? Oh, no, he just moved.
Louis Johnson, Volin, South Dakota. I don't know how to say this, but I really don't want to complain about everything that's wrong. I want to thank you guys. We elected you, and as far as I'm concerned, your job isn't to run out and ask everybody if everything is okay. Your job is to run the government. If I wanted to have input, I have your phone numbers, I can call you. I don't see why everything has to get brought to a public vote all the time. This is a republic, and we have rules, we follow the rules. You don't like the rules, change the rules. The other thing I want to add is I heard yesterday that they started setting stakes for the new pellet mill out at Napa Junction. And my understanding, that is a $10 to $12 million project. And all I can say is, gee, I'm sure glad this commission had the foresight to reverse a previous decision, get government money, get private people, a business to offer to pay for the road to it. And now we have the second business moving out there. And everybody, oh, geez, it's going to cost more than what we get in. If we don't build or develop anything in the county, I can't see where that's going to add anything to the tax base. And I haven't really seen, I mean, I've heard, today I saw a horrible article about the stench of pigs in Sioux Falls. So far, I don't think it's hurt them. It seems like they're still doing better. Anyway, and thank you for figuring out a cheaper way to fix a road, because I drove 301 and I think it's a hell of a lot better than it's been in the last 15 years.
That concludes public comment for tonight. Items for next meeting. A couple things for the calendar. We have mass fatality training August 20th at 6 PM, Fire Station 2. We have a District 3 meeting August 30th in Mitchell at 3 o'clock,
What date?
August 30th. I don't know what day that is. And we also have the convention in Pier, September 10th and 11th.
And the county meetings tomorrow?
Oh, where's that at?
Can't.
Oh, that's at the Canton Barn, it's tomorrow. Is that at, what time is that?
Well, 11:30 and then you eat at 12. Or they started at 12.
Did you figure out who took the minutes last time? Wasn't me. Hope somebody brings them. Okay, anything for the next meeting on the agenda? Okay, I don't think I have anything necessary. Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, who's gonna second?
Second.
Okay. All, discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.